John Gardner, Honourable Lee Davis, Mr Cregan, and His Worship the Mayor of Gummaraka. Unelected but universally acclaimed as the Mayor of Gummaraka, Mr Brooksby and friends. My father was very fond of humour. He loved laughing. And he was very fond of self-deprecatory humour, a joke on himself. So this story, which is in 2 chapters, is concerning when he was first elected. Now, Dad went to war with the 1st 27th Battalion and got blown to pieces, along with another bloke called Archie Cameron. Archie Cameron put his name up for federal politics, got elected to the House of Representatives in Canberra, and ultimately became Speaker of the House over there. And he said to Dad, Tom, you'd be good at politics. There's an election coming up in South Australia, put your hand up for the Liberal Party. Dad said, I'd be no good. Archie Cameron prevailed on him to put his name forward, and he was selected as one of the candidates for the district of Murray. In those days, now we have single member electorates, but then there were 3 members to an electorate. And so the district of Murray reached from Norton Summit in the far southwestern corner, all through the Adelaide Hills, up to the Barossa, but not including the Barossa, not including Mount Barker, and then across the plains to the River Murray. Great big electorate. At the previous election, they had elected 3 members for the Labor Party. So, now the problem was that the election was called in 30 days. And if you didn't go to people's town hall and talk, they wouldn't vote for you. There was no television, there was no way of reaching people unless you went to their town hall. And if you didn't go to their town hall, they would not vote for you. The trouble was, there were 30 days and about 45 town halls. So Dad organised, they said, we organised double bungers. The double bunger was the Liberal Party would hire the town hall here and Centennial Hall in Loberthal, same night. And 2 of the blokes would go up to Centennial Hall up in Loberthal, one bloke would come here, he'd speak, and when one of them had finished, he'd come down and relieve him, he'd go up there and relieve him, and he'd come down, and so everybody saw everybody. So it was, they organised this between Palmer and Black Hill. Now you know where Palmer is, you probably don't know where Black Hill is. It's about 30 kilometres out in the Mallee north of Palmer. The problem is, between Palmer and Black Hill, there is an intersection that they call Monkey Corner, and it's a bit like that. There are roads coming in from all directions, and if you don't find the right road, you find the wrong one. Dad was the three Liberal guys that were standing was Mr Playford, Mr Shannon, and Mr Morford. Mr Morford wasn't good in the country. He was the weak link in the chain. So he started first. 2 of them went to Palmer and Dad went to Black Hill. Dad thought, I think I'll dawdle a bit and I won't, I'll talk about how the crops are and, etc., etc. But he was met by Mr Schultz. Mr Schultz says, my name is Schultz, I am the chairman. We will start the meeting. Okay. Dad came into the hall, full of faces, giving Dad full attention, but no encouragement. And I must also mention that at the previous election, there were about 53, I think, votes from Black Hill. There were 53 votes for the Labor Party and none for the Liberal Party, so it was stony ground. So Dad had one speech. It went for an hour. Mine doesn't. It went for an hour with various quotes from eminent politicians and philosophers, etc., etc. And a Liberal policy and everything that should be done, like this, and he held forth for 1 hour. Everybody's listening. No encouragement. At the end of it, he said, are there any questions? There were no questions. So Dad sat down. Mr Schultz stood up and he said, Mr Morford has got lost. Mr Playford will speak to us again. How many speeches did Dad have? One. He thought, well, if they didn't get it the first time, maybe they'll get it the second time. So he gave it to them word for word. 1 hour. With all of the quotes, etc., which he had by heart. And they all listened intently. Any questions? No questions. Mr. Schultz said the meeting is closed. Dad thanked them for having him, and he went home. Mr. Morford had got lost on Monkey Corner, went to Manham and booked into a hotel where he spent the night. The people at Palmer had Mr. Morford and Mr. Shannon, and the people at Black Hill had Mr. Playford times 2. Comes the election. Dad's down at the tally room, watching the votes come in. Comes the vote from Black Hill. 53 votes for the Liberal Party. What do you reckon Dad thought? What do you reckon Dad thought? You can't see the picture. I'd love to be able to see the picture. We can't look at it yet.
We will soon.
What do you think Dad thought?
I think he was thinking, thank goodness Mr. Morford got distracted.
He thought, I didn't think they were listening, but they were listening. And that wasn't such a bad speech, you know, and he was fairly pleased with himself. And if you look at this picture, I don't think it's an archetypal picture of Dad because he's looking pleased with himself, I think. And they got elected to Parliament. End of the first chapter. Part 2. 18 months later, the pastor of the Lutheran church at Manham, who also was the pastor of the Lutheran church up at Black Hill, invited my dad up to open a strawberry fete at Black Hill on such and such a day. Dad said, love to come. I grow strawberries, I'll bring a crate. So he went up there one day. Wasn't long before across the paddock comes Mr. Schultz. Mr. Schultz says, my name is Schultz. Yes, I remember you were the chairman of the meeting. Yes, he said, I was. Dad said, I was so thankful for the support that the district has given me. If there's anything I can do, don't hesitate to, etc., as politicians do. Don't hesitate to ask. I was so happy with the support that you gave me. Then Mr. Schultz said, I knew your grandfather. Yes, my dad said, my grandfather was Premier in South Australia in the 1890s. Yes, says Mr. Schultz. And in 1892, we have a bad drought, terrible drought. And the wheat just come up, and the magpies eat the wheat. And we cannot shoot the magpies because they are protected. Good Lutheran, honest, law-abiding citizens. Okay? We cannot shoot the magpies because the magpies are protected. So I wrote a letter to your grandfather and he came up and we showed him the wheat just come through the ground and the magpies eat the wheat and we cannot shoot the magpies because the magpies are protected. And your grandfather said, shoot the bloody magpies. And suddenly the penny dropped. Why had they voted en masse for my father? Two things. Mr. Schultz was the patriarch of that district. He was the patriarch. They looked to him for advice, direction and everything else, and he said, vote for Playford. His grandfather was a good bloke. And Dad realised it had nothing to do with his ability or his good looks or his speech or anything else. It was because he was the grandson of his grandfather. And he loved to tell that joke, and then he would burst into uproarious laughter on the joke which was on him, that he was so foolish as to think that he'd done a fairly good job. And when you see that picture, it hasn't got a full-blown smile. It's got a bit of a little bit pleased with how he's turned out. Thank you.